And we're live. What's up, everybody? How y'all doing? Happy weekend. Unless you're actually living on the land, Sunday's the first day of the week, so happy week for those living in Israel, Palestine. Did you all know that? To our international viewers, I can't say this with full confidence in the Palestinian territories, but I'm pretty certain it's the same. But Sunday is not a day off; it's the first day of the week. Um, and there might be a few other countries that do that, but certainly in the West, Sunday's a day off, which is interesting if you think about the Sabbath, meant to be the seventh day, Saturday. So I don't know how that got switched up in Western culture, but it did. Today we're going to do a nice little casual stream. First off, let me shout out our patrons. Renee Gordon, Adam Boaz-Becker, Neve Goldstein, and David Edwards. These are our visionary members. Thank you to all our patrons and everybody supporting the show. If you want to support the show, you can find out how to do that in the description. Casual stream. As you can see, I'm dressed quite casual as well. Fitting the theme of today's show. Interestingly, this is like a cut hoodie. I was born in New York, so technically I'm allowed to rock this, right? But I noticed when I wear this out, I actually get like more attention than usual from like the opposite sex. And so here's a little tip for the single guys out there. Why would I get more attention when I'm wearing a cut shirt? And sometimes I'll wear it with nothing underneath. I want to be a little proper for the stream, so I have a t-shirt underneath. But I think it's like there's this concept, if you don't give a fuck, this is a very I don't give a fuck kind of hoodie, and you wear it with confidence, I think that goes a long way. So that doesn't mean that dressing up nice isn't good and won't get you attention, but sometimes a low effort, high confidence outfit will do wonders. So give it a shot. See how that works for you. Anyways, what are we going to talk about today? We'll do Israel-Palestine Q&A. We'll talk about some other stuff. We'll have fun with it, I want this one to be a little bit more lighthearted than the usual episode. It is Sunday. So much pain in the world these days. Let us get our mind off things. John Avinsky goes, I think you look cute in the shirt. There we go. Thank you, Jennifer. Actually, I believe it would be Yana. Correct me if I'm mistaken. Yana confirming my theory. So interestingly, a friend of mine, she told me that she sometimes listens to these streams to help her sleep at night or to relax. I found this kind of surprising. I've been told before that I have a soothing voice, but just the nature of the content is so heavy that I don't know. I feel like it's the kind of content that would give one nightmares. And it's not like she has much interest in the conflict. She is not Jewish, Israeli, or Palestinian. Also, shout out to a friend that gave me this feedback. I guess the reason I'm bringing this up is, does anybody else do that? Does anybody else find this content to be relaxing? Because I guess if so, I might do occasional episodes that are for the sake of relaxation, where we'll talk about more lighthearted topics, maybe like philosophy and random trivia stuff. And I'll make my voice a little bit more soothing, right? There's like, I have a tone that's a little bit more like if I'm like conversational or like even an intellectual concept, and then I could like kind of slow it down a little bit and make it a really soothing voice. And what's really my interest in doing this? Well, beyond Israel-Palestine, my real goal in life is to just spend my time doing things that can elevate well-being, right? And this is reflected from doing this, work on Sulha to my company, Grateful Giraffes, which is all about elevating collective well-being. So, people need something to relax to. So I could see myself doing an occasional episode where it's more for the sake of relaxation. So I guess chat, comments, let me know if you find that interesting, and I'm happy to dedicate an occasional episode to that. Lior goes, hey Lior, good to see you here. It's been a while. Thought you were born in Jersey. No, I wasn't, but I did live in Jersey most of my childhood until the age of 18, and then I moved to Israel, and I lived in Israel for the past 14 years. Only a little over a year ago did I come out to Venice, California to build my company, Grateful Giraffes. Uh, I do very much miss Israel. My whole family is there. Um, Immediate and extended family. I have nieces and nephews and a cat also who I miss dearly. Um, but duty calls. So I do hope to be able to split my time more between California and Israel. But for the next year or so, I will be primarily in Venice, California, which is an amazing place. I mean, such a special place, such high caliber people here who care about the right things. It's not all about the money in these parts. It's let's, spend my time doing some amazing shit, but let me also be happy and healthy. And that's kind of the kind of person we're looking for in the Grateful Giraffes community. People at the intersection of, as we like to say, a grateful giraffe is a dreamer who gets shit done, right? So this is Venice is abundant with those people. Dan, good to see you here. Yana goes, yeah, I found the show relaxing. I think because it's about because I'm about peace. Cool. Okay, thanks for that confirmation. What other feedback have I gotten? So those who don't know, my mom actually watches a lot of these live streams. Hi, Ema. Shout out, mommy. She gave me feedback that I sometimes swallow my words. So I'll be talking and then I'll kind of like not fully enunciate a word. And I have noticed I do that. So that's something I'm trying to pay more attention to, just to make the content a little bit more clear. And with that, I'm calling out to all the viewers to leave me feedback if there's something you think I personally could improve on, something you think the show could do differently, some type of content you'd like to see more of. In general, I very much value feedback from those in my life. It's definitely an opportunity to learn and grow. That said, it is important because of the nature of this work to understand that not all feedback should be taken seriously, because there's a lot of anger out there. A lot of people are just not giving sincere feedback. They're just lashing out, let's say. So I don't take all feedback seriously. I try to see, is it, a feedback with good intent? Is it sincere? And, certainly I view feedback as one of the greatest gifts one can get. Actually, let's talk about some. Should I do this? Should I don't want to do this to put this guy on blast. I'm not even going to say his name. I want to read a comment that I got recently. Let's see. So the video, the debate with Joseph Cohen, that was a cool episode. It did get a fair bit of people upset, and the reason I know this is that the same day that went live, I lost some amount of subscribers, which was quite interesting. Which is like, nobody should subscribe to this channel because of my personal views. You should subscribe because you like the concept that we're going to bring like a wide variety of different people together for conversations. I'll say some things you agree with, some things you disagree with, but our mission stays true. So don't get too offended by something I say. That shouldn't be the reason you subscribe or unsubscribe. Let's see. Here, where's this comment? Dun, 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 dun. Cool, check this out. Okay, after watching the entire debate, I can say 100% to you, Adar, that you are losing it. Can really see in the past 6 months how you slowly are less and less emotionally stable and less rational. Maybe it's too much psychedelics. Maybe it's your way to deal with the situation and the conflict. I don't know, but you have to treat yourself. You used to be very accurate, rational, true to your word, but you became misinformation spreader, disconnected from reality, and delusional. I wish you only health. So I don't know if my views have actually really changed all too much. It sounds like what's going on here is he heard parts of my views that he agreed with, leading him to like me and believe I am a rational actor. And then he heard some things he didn't like, leading him to conclude that I am somehow mentally unstable. I invited him on the show to make the case of what he's saying. He did not respond. Um, I have noticed most of the people in the comments who I have invited on the show do not. And again, I'm not going to say they're all scared or something like that. Some people, English isn't their first language, or they have a job and want to remain anonymous. So, there are other considerations between being scared, but it is interesting that those who are loudest in the comment sections very rarely back it up. And to pay attention, there's nothing in that feedback that I could really do anything with. Like you said, get help. Like, I mean, I'm if I don't agree with his analysis on what I need help with, so how could I get help on that? That being said, I'm very dedicated to self improvement. I do all sorts of different health and wellness modalities out here. It's part of what we're doing in building a community is learning what's out there, learning how we can elevate well being. So I do these different like somatic experiences, breath work, integrated family systems. I tried the other day is pretty interesting. You know, I'm on the path, but again, that's just a form of feedback that clearly somebody is just expressing anger in a way that's not constructive, and there's absolutely nothing I could do with that. Let me actually give you another form of feedback that from that same video that I actually think is constructive. Okay. Dun, dun, dun. So this is from Connie Risk, and I will shout out Connie Risk just because I think this is, something positive. Connie goes, I think I would have liked this better if the two had discussion, not a debate. I find myself wondering what they really think and feel, though it was civil and friendly. In today's world, things aren't always black and white. I mean, we don't all think that way in a deep discussion of the issues without the need to be on one side or the other, I think would have been much more valuable. So I think this is actually fair feedback. Generally, when there's a debate, we're both battling each other, and it's not an opportunity to really, maybe it doesn't create the most balanced perspective, and it doesn't allow either side to admit where they might be right or wrong. I hear that. I'd be down to do a solo episode just talking about the excessive force issue, in which I would present Joseph's argument, right? Because I think that, and interestingly, when I've been on other discussions and people make the case, let's say that Israel's committing genocide, the counter of mine actually sounds kind of similar to what Joseph's saying. So I definitely hear that. There's definitely some benefit to doing a solo one or just more discussion and less debate. Do I have any other reflections from the debate? I thought it went well. I did want to show you all. Yeah, let me. You guys want to see what like YouTube analytics on the back end looks like? Hold on. How do you do this? Screen share. Hold on. Okay. Fahed Abu On goes, it's hard to convince those who already made up their mind. Yep, I agree completely. Fahed, are you the same one that reached out to me on Twitter? I believe you are. So Fahed is a Gazan who left Gaza 3 weeks before October 7th. And we are going to find a time for him to be on the channel to have a conversation. So I'm looking forward to that. Let's see. Present share screen. Okay, check this out. So this is like the back end of YouTube. Now this will get into like also the financials, which I have no problem being transparent about. But if you go to analytics, no, maybe there's a better way. So yeah, just so you see like the dashboard, you could see like the channel got 51,000 views in the last 28 days. Watch time, 8.7 thousand hours of watch time, 178 new subscribers. So look, this was the day of the debate. Is Israel using excessive force? The next day, boom, from an average of like 10 subscribers a day to 0. That means a bunch new joined, but some left, right? So this debate really triggered people to the point where they unsubscribed. And then it kind of went back to normal. I don't know what happened here. Oh yeah, when I did a conversation with those two guys who are doing Sulha like work in universities. I don't know how that also brought us down to 0 because that's such a there was nothing controversial in that episode, so I don't know what happened. But then we go back up, and there's up days and down days. Here's the revenue. I have no problem being transparent about this. The channel in the last month made $215. This is all ad revenue. This money, most of this goes to two people. One by the name of Roberto in the Philippines and Maria in Venezuela. They help upload the content to different platforms as well as review it and clip it. So you'll see that there's shorts and clips and stuff like that. That's done by them. Most of that goes there. There's a little bit left over, but not really enough to hire somebody else. The idea is like if we could get this revenue to the and plus there's $130 a month made through Patreon as well. So we're doing like $340 a month. If this number can somehow and who knows, I'm not in a rush, right? I'm very busy, but if we could get this up to the few thousands, the idea would really be to hire somebody full-time. That full-time person would really manage the entire channel and do a lot of work booking different interesting guests, right? Because the more interesting guests we have, the more the channel could grow. The more we could expose this format to people, which is really all about like peace and reconciliation and just having challenging conversations in a calm and respectful manner. So that's where the money would go once we could get it to the few $1,000 range. And as you could see here, top content, we could see that the debate between Nom Chomsky and Rudy Roshman is still, I think it's 3 years now or 2.5 years, and it's still the top content in the last 48 hours. It's been viewed 1,700 times. When we do like a debate with like a live stream, like with Joseph Cohen, that does hit the top spot for a few days and then goes back down. This is pretty consistently number one. That's a little bit about the back end here. In case anyone was wondering. Let me answer some questions, and then I'll talk more reflections on my debate with Joseph Cohen. So Hector says, have you heard Noam Chomsky opinions about Gaza and Israel? Do you agree with his assessment opinions on Israel? So Noam Chomsky has been quite silent lately, and the reason for this is because he's not doing well. He is, I believe, 96 now, and he's on his way out, which is not surprising for someone that age. It is sad because he was quite a figure. A story about Noam Chomsky. I discovered Noam Chomsky when I was probably around 24 or something. And I remember thinking to myself, wow, such an interesting guy, so much knowledge. And then thinking to myself, I have a feeling I'll get to the point in life one day where I'll have the privilege to speak to all sorts of world-renowned intellectuals, but I don't feel like I'll get there in time to speak to Noam Chomsky because of his age. And then by the grace of the universe, just 5 years later, someone who watched the channel reached out wanting to talk, and he mentioned that he happened to know Noam. Shout out to Sherry Sufi, who's been on the channel. He's an Australian politician. I asked him if he could connect us. Shortly after, he connected us via email. And that is how we happened to get Noam on the channel twice, once for a one-on-one interview and then once for the debate, another time for the debate with Rudy. So that was pretty amazing that I almost accepted that I'll never speak to him. And then it ended up happening. So yeah, that was definitely a powerful moment in my life when I'll never forget. And it's not like that debate went particularly well. They're kind of speaking very different languages and talking past each other. And, at the end, Rudy and I had a little fight about the time and stuff like that, which did certainly strain our relationship. But we made peace, like, we're friends and all, but there were it did require some work to get back to where we were. And he actually hasn't been on the channel since that debate. I don't know if it's entirely connected to that, but he's been very busy with his own stuff. But it's all love when we see each other. We hug, we talk, we catch up here and there. Um, so yeah, that's interesting. Near Rofa, good to see you here. Daniel Leaftuck, good to see you here as well. Wow, this is a nice little reunion we have going on. Oh, and in general, my views on Chomsky. Look, I think Chomsky is excellent in his critique. He's very good at saying why some entity is bad, particularly Israel and the United States. This has been the primary work of his criticism. Now, in his attempt to give a full critique of one entity or another, he sometimes glosses over criticizing another entity that may also deserve similar critique, giving the perception of bias, which is true. He also has never really been much of a solution-oriented guy. So it's not like he says, this is the critique and here's a clear solution and how we could get there. That's just never really been his thing. And again, you can't be somebody that does everything. So he's a good criticizer. And I think a lot of his critique is very accurate. So I've appreciated his work, and I appreciate his immensely deep wealth of knowledge. Yeah. So yeah, I keep saying, so my debate with Joseph, I thought it went well. People, is there a winner or loser? Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think I won. He probably thinks he won. He won. Whoever agrees with him more might agree with him. Whoever agrees with me more might agree with me. But it's not about the winner as much as creating a good conversation for people to view and learn from. When it comes to whenever I debate, almost every debate I've had, I'm almost always at a disadvantage from one certain regard, that I'm debating people who this is what they do. Kind of for a living, right? So whether it was talking to Blake Flayton about is anti-Zionism anti-Semitism, or J.F. Garepi about anti-Semitism, or Joseph Cohen on the excessive force topic, they all spend an immense more time on these topics than me. I would say hundreds to thousands of hours more time they've spent on these topics, right? I do one stream a week. I don't actually even really do much prep for these debates. So they almost always have an advantage there. The particular clear advantage that I feel like I have in these debates, and specifically in the last debate, is I feel like I was just debating an easier side. I think the case for Israel using excessive force is not hard to make. There's many examples of it, and defending against that is much harder. Also, I think that I don't feel a loyalty to any one side, so it gives me a certain freedom that others don't quite have, which can present itself in positive light to those viewing. So Joseph very much would struggle to acknowledge bad things Israel has done, or he would feel important to add a caveat to kind of soften the critique. I don't feel that same pressure to do so. So I think it kind of gives me that freedom, kind of gives me an advantage. Oh, we have Zohar here. Wow, this is quite the reunion, huh? Social Surrealist goes, if elections were held today in Israel, who would you vote for? I would need to see the polling. So I try to vote very strategically. So for example, let's say I saw that Benny Gantz was projected to win, but not by much. It was a close one. Then I would vote for him to ensure that he won. Let's say I saw Benny Gantz is going to get like a landslide, but let's say a party like Meretz, which is probably the most left-wing relevant party in Israel, they were like just on the verge of achieving the threshold to be in government, then I would vote for them. So I would need to look at the numbers to decide. Near asked, when did you debate Joseph Cohen? I think it was a week ago, maybe a week and a half. You could look up, is Israel using excessive force? Danielle goes, hey, Adar, I want to say I love you. Love you too, Danielle. So here's a cool story about Danielle. Danielle and I met through Sulha. We became friends in real life. I attended her wedding. Real connections are made through this channel. So she continues and say, I'm here supporting you in your channel, and will be honest that I don't feel optimistic or hopeful. I hear that. It's hard. It's hard. What keeps me hopeful? Well, I think that, first of all, I try to not tie anything I do to an actual end result. So I accept that we may not see peace in our lifetime. It sucks to admit that, but that might be the case. But I also recognize that these live streams help some amount of people. It also helps me. For me, it's a channel to express, right? So instead of tying this work to the end result, I just tie it to the action itself, right? Really making it about the journey less than the destination. I also see how fast the world is changing and how fast things can change, right? Like, to think a decade ago, we would have this relationship with the UAE where Israelis can travel to the UAE and feel safe. And in fact, I'd say Jews probably feel safer in Dubai than they do in many places in Europe and even New York, right? So who could have thought that possible? Who could have thought that we're nearing some kind of an agreement with Saudi Arabia? So the world changes very fast, and sometimes massive change is right around the corner and we just don't see it. So I try to remind myself this to give myself hope. And another one is, the more we believe in this better future, the easier it is to achieve. It's very hard to achieve a future you don't believe is possible. So hope is essential to changing, the world we're living in. By the way, thanks in advance for everyone who tossed us a super chat. We will prioritize those super chats. As I mentioned, that money will go to eventually try to hire somebody full time so we can really take this to the next level. Imagination Scene goes, Adar, what Palestine Israel book that you know has been the most detailed or top 5 books? I am not the right person to ask because I have actually never read a single book on Israel Palestine. I don't know if I should be ashamed to admit that or take pride in admitting that. I've read the entire Israel Palestine Wikipedia, as well as a fair bit of the sources they put there. I've read articles and summaries of different books. So most of my knowledge on Israel Palestine is from doing that reading, but primarily actually just from talking to people, right? So I'm by no means an expert on the history or on certain aspects of the conflict. There's people who are going to be much better informed on certain aspects of the conflict. But through having these conversations, potentially at this point, hundreds of conversations with Israelis and Palestinians, if there's any part of the conflict that I've become, let's say, an expert on, it's really the narratives, understanding both sides and what drives them and how they view the other. So I don't have a book recommendation, but if anybody in chat does, please toss that there and I'll mention it. Do we have a book channel in Discord? So for those who don't know, we have a Discord where it's just, Discord's a platform where you think kind of like, for those who know Discord, it's kind of like WhatsApp, but with different channels for different topics. So we do have book suggestions. Yeah. So for those who want, let's toss a link. Let's toss a link to the Discord real quick. So there's book suggestions, and that might be a good place to check. But again, a lot of the books are biased, and just because somebody suggests a book in book suggestions doesn't mean that book is going to give you the best information. So, but it could be a good place to check out. Anyways, there's the Discord. Cool. Zora's asking, do I want to bring people on? Maybe, yeah. Let me think about it. The Callin shows just get intense. I was kind of trying to keep this one low key. If we don't do a Callin show today, we will do one next week. Hi everyone, this is from Shachal Ziv. Hi everyone, love this channel. From my perspective, the best debates are the ones you lose. It means you learned something new. If you win a debate, it means it was an argument. Okay, I like that perspective. Although I do think you could win a debate and still learn something. So, my debate with Joseph did give me a little bit more insight on certain issues, made me think deeper on certain parts of the conflict. Yeah. Yana Vinsky goes, you're a courageous thinker. I think this is your advantage as well. Well, I very much appreciate that. Social Surrealist goes, Adar, I believe the best way to achieve peace and justice is from Western supporting and empowering the Israel left. What is your opinion on that take? I'm not sure what that means for the West to empower the Israeli left, like give them funding. Yeah, that could help, but the Israeli left is extremely weak because it requires hope. And those without hope, it's like the longer the conflict goes on, the more terror Israelis face, the more radicalized they become. So for the Israel left to be reawakened, it will require belief in a solution. And I don't know if the American left or Western support can reignite that belief in a solution. I think that would need to come from something on the ground changing drastically. So I think it could help, but I don't think that's going to be enough. Is this inside out? No, sorry. There's like a pattern here that made me feel like there's a tag there. Danielle goes, yeah, but UAE recognizes Israel's right to exist. That is what Israel needs for peace. How can you achieve peace with a group who denies their right to exist? Well, the UAE now does, right? This is a change in how they view things. Israel was not recognized by the UAE as a legitimate entity up until recently. So it just shows how things can change. Palestinians refusing Israel's right to exist is not in their DNA. It is in their culture. Culture changes. Culture changes every single day, and environment helps change that culture. So the more Israel acts in a way that is viewed as evil towards Palestinians, whether it's the brutality of a response to October 7th, whether it's expansions of settlements or how soldiers treat Palestinians in the West Bank, how settlers treat Palestinians in the West Bank and often aren't held accountable. All of this contributes to this idea that Israel is an evil entity that cannot be accepted. How can you accept an evil entity? So I agree that Palestinians need to accept Israel's right to exist. But in order for that to happen, Israel will need to transform itself to an extent. So the best thing Palestinians can do is accept Israel's right thing sorry, I'm choking on my words. The best thing Palestinians can do is accept Israel's right to exist. The best thing Israelis can do is to transform Israel to make it a nation that is easier for Palestinians to accept. And any transformation, any change, I don't want to say any, almost all change in the past decade or so has not made Israel seem like more of a friend, but more of an enemy to the Palestinians. Imagination Scene, thank you so much for the €5, our first super chat. Relatively new viewer and Muslim here, and it's been nice to see how open you are. Keep up the good work. Thank you so much, and welcome to the channel. Cool. We're getting some book suggestions. Again, I can't tell you how accurate these books are, but I will read them out. 10 Myths About Israel by Ilan Pape. Benny Morris, The Creation of the Palestinian Refugee Problem. And The 100-Year War on Palestine by Rashid Khalidi. So Danny asked, what's Discord? So check it out. I dropped the link. I'll drop another link. It's our community chat where Israelis and Palestinians and supporters of either side are there chatting. What about hope in regards to the rise of anti-Semitism in the West? Yana asks. I don't know. I think anti-Semitism, I don't really see a way to solve it in the short term because there's certain things about Jews that, and this framing might make it sound like I'm blaming Jews for anti-Semitism. I'm certainly not, but there's a certain nature to Jews' place in the world that make it as such that there will always be some amount of animosity, or maybe not always, but as long as this certain nature exists, it's hard to see that changing. And a lot of this really comes down to the overrepresentation, right? So Jews are overrepresented in many places in society. First of all, in just the wealth that they hold. In the United States, Jews are highly overrepresented in finance, in tech, in media, in Hollywood. These are all industries of influence. Most Jews also have some amount of loyalty to Israel. Now, interestingly, the whole, at least if you look at the IRA definition of anti-Semitism, it says accusing Jews of dual loyalty is a form of anti-Semitism. I would say that is true if it's a blanket statement. If you say all Jews have dual loyalty, that's a generalization, right? That's a form of group generalization. You could say it's a form of group hate. But the truth is, most Jews have some loyalty to a country different to the one they're living in. This shouldn't be controversial. I mean, this is true. So it's hard for many people, and most of my interactions with anti-Semites have been American anti-Semites, so I'm very much representing like where their grievances or part of their grievance. They struggle with the fact that there's this tiny ethnic group that is highly overrepresented in positions of power, and they have some loyalty to a different nation, right? How do we actually get people to not be bothered by that? And maybe even if there was no other loyalty, there still could be animosity because they see this ethnic group that might prefer their own, right? Is there some amount of nepotism? So let's say there's a Jewish CEO and you have two applicants who are equally qualified. One's Jewish, one isn't. Is the Jew more likely to get the job? I would actually assume that's probably true, right? So these are things that, how do you change them? It's not hard to understand why a Jew would have loyalty to Israel. It's not hard to understand why there's some in-group bias, right? All groups have in-group bias. Even white Christians, right? If like the boss is a white Christian, they very well might be more likely to hire a white Christian, until this whole diversity thing came in, and now people are really not looking to hire white people, especially white men. But as long as there's some amount of in-group preference that Jews have and some amount of loyalty to a different country, and Jews are so highly overrepresented in these industries, I don't see any way how we could get over a lot of these, like a lot of what drives anti-Semitism, because that is a lot of the energy behind it comes from just that. Now, there is like counters to all of these, right? So for example, and again, these counters, even we could make them more widely understood, but I don't think it's enough to entirely like end anti-Semitism. So, for example, everybody in a position of power has some loyalty to some other group. It's not always another nation, but it's often, let's say, their friends and family, right? So it's not really a problem with Jews in positions of power. It's people in positions of power are more loyal to those close to them. Okay. When it comes to nepotism, I think all groups have some form of preference. So that's also not something exclusive to Jews. But again, are those counters entirely convincing enough? Like again, if you're an American, you're not Jewish, you don't like Israel standing in the world, you don't like what they're doing to Palestinians, you don't like the amount of, let's say, influence that the pro-Israel lobby has in American politics, and then you really see Jews dominating certain industries. That now, a very healthy psychological state would be like, okay, that reflects on some Jews, but that doesn't reflect on the individual. When I meet a Jew, I should treat them with dignity and respect because we should not make judgments about groups based on the actions of some individuals, right? So that's the idea we need to teach people. And this is really, if we can make that idea of viewing the individual rather than the group, really like an essential part of like culture and how we view things, that actually should destroy all forms of group hate. But I think we're very much wired in such a way where we do group generalize. I think there's some like this was evolutionarily advantageous to generalize groups. So it's really fighting our biology to have this view the individual and only the individual. And I don't know if it's realistic to just accept people to evolve past that idea so quickly. So I don't know if I have a clear solution, but I do think having conversations just like this, I think the times where we have had anti-Semites on the show very well may have gotten people to view things a little bit different. And at the very least, just understand that you should view people as individuals. So that's my thoughts on that. It's a tough one. It's a tough one for sure. Let's see. Isani goes, Isani, good to see you. Isani is one of our viewers from Pakistan. So we're global these days. Hello, everyone. Adar, hope all is well. On your side, question: will the two narratives, Israel's and Arab Palestinians, ever converge in a mutually accepting narrative for all in the region? I hope so, right? I think that's part of what we need to do here: build a unified narrative. One that encompasses the fears, concerns, hopes, and aspirations of all people. What does that look like? Hard to know, but like I sometimes try to think of like how can we frame things in a way that both people can agree with, right? So Zionism to Jews is this beautiful indigenous rights movement. Zionism to Palestinians is a settler colonial movement. So can we describe Zionism as an indigenous rights movement that used settler colonial tactics to achieve its goals, right? Is that like part of building a unified narrative, like a statement like that? I don't know. Or even taking some of the slogans, although people get offended by this, taking some of the slogans and like free Palestine and Israel from hate, or from the river to the sea, all the people will be free. Maybe a mutual recognition that both Israelis and Palestinians are indigenous people that just happen to be in conflict with one another, and part of peace is understanding that we are really just more alike than we are different, and we're fighting over something we have in common, which is our love for the same land. So unifying over that love. So I definitely think we need to build this unified narrative, and I think it could happen. You guys want to see a cool video? Which from the river to the sea, all the people will be free, kind of remind me of. I didn't post it. I'm going to do it right after this live stream, but let's see. And it is a little bit offensive it will be a little bit offensive to some people, but that's okay. It's okay. Share screen, window. Check this out. Wait, can you all see this? No, not yet. Boom. Look at this AI generated art of an Israeli and Palestinian holding a flag in a field of mushrooms. And then you can't hear the audio. Oh, the audio is not on it, but I put in a voiceover. From the river to the sea, mushrooms will set us free. It's just a fun little bit. I don't really think that mushrooms alone can solve the conflict, but we certainly need to heal trauma. And there's many ways to heal trauma, but psychedelics can definitely help us do that. Imagination Scene goes, have you seen the Professor Ron Stockton channel? Stockton after class, he's the most unbiased in that I would not necessarily guess which side he took just listening. No, I actually have not heard of him, but I will check that out. Ron Stockton, cool. Connor goes, hi, Adar, writing from San Diego. Was wondering if you had any thoughts on the apparent murder of Alexei Navalny in prison, and wonder if you had any thoughts on the Russia war with Ukraine. I'm not super well informed about this. I mean, this Putin has at this point murdered a fair bit of opposition, both in politics and in media. That's kind of his thing. Which, obviously there's zero justification of that. The only thing he really did was make Alexei Navalny a martyr who will now live forever, right? When someone is killed for their views, they become eternal. So, for example, like if MLK Jr. wasn't assassinated and died of old age, he would not be nearly as famous. We might not have an MLK Jr. day, for example. And this also goes for like artists and stuff, right? Like Biggie and Tupac, if they weren't killed in their prime, then they very well may not be legends forever the way they are now. So it's short-sighted, but the idea behind Alexei Navalny, and I admittedly don't know much about him, is now, will live for eternity. And when I say eternity, I don't really mean eternity, because eventually, the universe itself will die. So, but it's a good, call it a metaphorical term. Thoughts on Russia's war with Ukraine? I mean, yeah, generally speaking, we should not be invading countries, sovereign countries, and trying to take their territory. So obviously Putin is in the wrong for that. Did some of his want to do that, is it connected to like NATO trying to expand its sphere of influence? I've heard that case made, and I could see that being the case. Like, again, I'm admittedly not an expert on this topic, but did the United States contribute to Putin's motivation to invade Ukraine? I think there's a case to be made that is the case. Does that justify it? Certainly not. What can we do about it? I'm not sure. I don't know if Ukraine can actually win long term. I think they are slowly losing territory, no matter how many billions of dollars we invest in them. So it seems like we need to come to the negotiating table and make some kind of a compromise, which very well may result in the loss of territory for Ukraine. But that would be better than the loss of all the Ukrainian territory. So I do hope to see an end to that bloodshed soon. Jake 2001 goes, Adar, the only realistic solution is two-state. Anything else is not good or fair to both people. It's interesting because the majority of both people don't want two states, right? So it is an interesting perspective that it would be unfair to listen to what the people themselves want. But I do get what you're saying. Most of them don't want two states, but it's not like they want justice for the other side or a solution that's good to the other side. So it's not like just because they don't want two states means we should listen to them. But I do think if there's more energy behind one state, it makes sense to look at what version of one state can work. And, as I've repeated many times on this channel, one state, like one democratic state from the river to the sea would end in disaster and more bloodshed than we've ever seen on the land, in my opinion. But a federation where, you don't have both populations competing over control of one government, I think that could work, right? So a federation would be splitting the land into many smaller states or cantons, having some amount of local autonomy, and then having, let's say, either a parliament that's needs to be 50-50 Israeli-Palestinian, or you have, let's say, a Palestinian parliament and an Israeli parliament and one dual parliament, right? There's different structures you could create with a system of checks and balances that ensure that you don't have this tension of competing over control, because that competition over demographic control would end in bloodshed. Let's see. Shachar Ziv goes, I feel Khalid and Morris balance each other. Morris is very thorough and fact-oriented, but limited because he relies only on written sources and doesn't speak or read Arabic. Cool. Yeah, imagine if we could get them on for a debate, huh? Who wants to help with that booking? Anybody have a connection to Benny Morris and Rashid Khalidi? Let's set that one up. Fahad asked a good question. Fahad goes, why do you think that people engaging in peace are so little? On the other hand, people engaging with propaganda and hate are a lot. Is it social media algorithms or is it just normal? So let me try to think through this. I really think one of the primary reasons is actually connected to our biology. So, we are the offspring of very violent people. There used to be, Homo sapiens used to walk the earth with, I think at one point, 7 other hominid species. One of the reasons they no longer exist is because we killed them. And Homo sapiens have just been killing each other for hundreds of thousands of years, right? Our primary means to resolving conflict for most of our history was not to sit down and negotiate. How do you do that with people when you can't speak the same language with them? Whenever a conflict would arise, those who were quickest to act violently were the ones who survived. So the genetics of the more violent populations were the ones who passed down. So we actually have genes in us of, like, honestly, murderous rapists. Kind of fucked up, right? But this very much is, we are the offspring of those people. So whenever you have a conflict and there's this fear of the other, we have a natural tendency to want to fight rather than sit and talk. Our wiring is as such. Now, what we do see when we're in a mindset of abundance and we don't fear the other, it's much easier to just sit and talk and make peace. But we very much are acting in a mindset of scarcity, a fear-based mindset, which leads us to see things black and white, us versus them, good versus bad, right versus wrong, right? We're very binary minded, and the more we fear the other, the harder it is to see the nuance, and the more we kind of see things in these black and white terms. So I think most of it really comes down to our biology. Homo sapiens are more oriented towards conflict than they are towards peace. It takes a lot of work, and we are evolving as a species. What's happening in Gaza now, or what happened on October 7th, for most of history was quite normal. Yeah, it happened. It's part of war. This global outcry we're seeing is a result of progress. It's a result that we don't accept this violence as the way. But again, we're still fighting hundreds of thousands of years of evolution, or one can even say millions of years of evolution, and it's going to take time to really move past it. So I actually think that's the primary reason. I don't think it's the algorithms as much. I think even before the internet, people were very much, viewed the world this way. Social media and the algorithms very well may contribute to it. But I don't think that's the primary energy behind why we orient towards war rather than peace. Danny Eshid goes, some Israelis argue that the Palestinians are not truly a clear ethnic nationality. What do you say to that? The Palestinians are today a people, right? And they're a people comprised of, call it Levantine Arab tribes that unified over the past 100 or so years. And these different tribes, they, if you look at their DNA, there are differences between them. Because the region is, has been really the center of many conflicts for thousands of years. So Palestinian DNA, some of it is Jewish DNA from thousands of years ago, right? Some of it is Arab DNA from the Arabia. And there's a lot of other mixtures from different populations that conquered the land. So I don't know if that matters much, like what's the DNA. I think the DNA of Palestinian people is really just a result of the complexity of the land for the past few thousand years. But these different Levantine Arab groups, at the end of the 1800s, early 1900s, when the concept of the nation state started becoming popularized, many people, including Jews, said, a nation, we want a nation, right? Palestinians were similar in this regard. Just the way the Jews wanted a nation, Palestinians did too. Now, what really solidified Palestinian national identity more than anything is actually Zionism, right? So there were some signs of Palestinian nationalism. Actually, I can't even say prior to Zionism, but during Ottoman Palestine, there were some signs of Palestinian nationalism in the form of Palestinian farmers rising up against Ottoman rule. They didn't like that they were ruled by Ottomans. But then when Zionists came to the land and wanted to create their own homeland, these Levantine Arabs were like, wait a minute, you can't create a Jewish homeland on our land. This is Arab land, right? So we are the Palestinian people. This is our land. So it is true that Palestinian national identity very much was solidified and strengthened through their unified efforts to combat Zionism. But that doesn't make it any less real. I mean, often identities are formed as a response to aggression from another group. Like the LGBTQ community. LGBTQ pride comes as a result of LGBTQ people historically not having the same rights as everybody else. If there was never any discrimination against that community, then we wouldn't see pride parades today. They wouldn't be seen as this distinct community. And I also think a lot of Jewish identity comes as like a solidification against anti-Semitism. So it's not, I agree they don't have a clear ethnic nationality, but it very much is a real people at this point. Dan goes, Adar, you're supporting a confederation, made several videos about it. Would you consider doing one more in depth about two states and the difficulties in it? Interested in Justin's view on it. Yeah, sure. Let's see, we could have Justin on, and we could have, what's his name? He already came on to do a presentation on the two-state solution. Or is a big two-state solution guy. They'd make a good case for why two states, and then maybe we need to bring someone on like Emmanuel Shachaf from the Federation Solution, and maybe one other person, and just have them have a nice, vibrant discussion. Yeah, I'd definitely be down for that. Panda Boom asks, do you think that the settlements in the West Bank are legal under international law? No, I think they're illegal under international law. And again, I'm not an expert. in international law, but from what I've understood, there's a pretty broad consensus amongst uh, scholars on international law that they are illegal. Um, and then you have like Israel's interpretation of that law, and they say it's legal. Well, I don't know if obviously Israel's not going to say it's illegal, so that to me doesn't carry much weight. But the consensus is that it's illegal. I think the way occupation works is you can occupy a territory for security. So let's say Israel perceives a threat in the West Bank. Uh, they then have a right to control the West Bank. But to move their citizens into the West Bank and even incentivize citizens to move there economically, I think that's when it becomes illegal. So it's not the holding of the territory, it's moving citizens into that territory to live there. Panda Boom goes, can you bring Rudy and Eliran Ben Yair to debate against the pro-Palestinian? Yeah, we're long overdue to have Rudy on. We also had Eliran on once years ago. I could reach back out to him. Rudy was recently served, like he just got out of Gaza. I think he's traveling now, maybe Thailand or something. So I'll reach out to him. I'll see if he's down. Imagination Scene goes, OpenAI has new text to video model called Sora, but it's not public. However, it's the best one out there and blowing the others out the water. Yeah. I've been seeing some Sora videos. Like I use ChatGPT every single day. So I'm learning a lot about AI. It's, I mean, better get ahead of the curve right now, because AI is going to change the world in ways that are so hard to even comprehend. May lead us to utopia, may lead us to dystopia. Hard to really see, but I'm trying to really stay caught up with everything going on, and it really has unlocked levels of efficiency for me. I do a lot of graphic design with AI. When I'm doing a discussion and I need to fact check something very quickly, I'll use ChatGPT, not Google, because it's just quicker. And again, you need to make sure it's not always fully accurate, but huge unlock. And now, so Sora is interesting. You say create. Let's watch it. Sora videos. Check this out. All right. I'm going to mute it for the ad. Check this out. So all of this is AI generated, no camera. This is all telling AI create this, and it creates it. Wait, is this on? Okay, here we go. So a litter of golden retriever puppies playing in the snow, their heads pop out of the snow. This is the prompt you give Sora, and this is what it created. So it's not yet perfect, right? Like you could tell that this isn't real, but I mean, this is just like the first generation of this technology. The implications of this are like hard to comprehend. I mean, Hollywood seems like it's donezo. If any single person, here's another one, some wildlife. If any single person can create video like this just by texting, and let's say you use ChatGPT to help you write a script, some like 12-year-old could sit at home and create a film that is competitive to Hollywood film. Is there a need for actors? Is there a need for producers and all of that? I think that there will remain a niche where people want to watch content or some art that is done by humans. There'll be a category of human created art, but the vast majority of our consumption of content is going to be AI generated, it seems. So that's interesting. And even this, like, will one day you have just like some dude can talk about Israel Palestine stuff in a way that's very balanced and nuanced that just blows me out of the water? Yeah, maybe. But honestly, that'd be probably good, because if AI can replace me, then I think that's a pretty good sign. But that just means AI can replace the propagandists out there as well. So then what? Right. So you see, like, it's unclear how this is even going to develop. If most propaganda is done by that's AI generated people, what will the world look like, right? When most arguments are constructed by AI. I don't know. It's hard to even comprehend how this plays out. A petri dish with bamboo forest growing within that has tiny red pandas running around it. What? See? Amazing. This is hilarious. What was this prompt? Drone of a view crashing against rugged cliff. Da, 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 big surge. Okay. Right. Like this, you cannot tell is AI generated. Instead of using some stock drone footage, you have it right there. A trailer for a space movie. Okay, so as you can see, this is all game changing stuff. And who knows, maybe AI will solve the conflict. It'll be able to like really understand what we need to do. So I could see it going in both ways, but I do think like a lot of creative jobs are done. Graphic design, writing, video editing, video production. I think those industries are going to massively change. You might have some people, like again, there'll be a niche, but I think most people in those fields are going to get replaced. And it's interesting that, for years it was said that AI will not replace those doing creative stuff, more like data processing jobs. But it seems the first people being replaced is actually those people doing creative things. So it's very interesting that this is how it's playing out. Elon Franco says, I think you should go on Destiny stream. I've emailed Destiny and he didn't reply. I think I even emailed him twice. So, what am I going to do at this point? Unless you want to just keep commenting in his chat to have me on. It's interesting because he does have a fair bit of people on the conflict, but I think it's probably that I don't have a big enough following, so he's not interested. Let's see. Should there be a Jewish state somewhere other than historical Palestine / biblical Eretz Israel? Should the Zionist Congress have went ahead with a plan of establishing a Jewish state in Uganda? I don't know. I think if we went to Uganda, there'd be the Israeli-Ugandan conflict. I think the idea of moving to a land and making it Jewish when there's other people living on that land is just not going to be accepted by those living there. It's not a realistic expectation. It only would work on a land that's not inhabited. Or if you do what other colonizers did and just killed everybody, right? Like if you kill enough of the native population, then you essentially end the conflict, right? Like that's what United States, Canada, South America, a lot of the reason that conflict ended is because they really engaged in genocide that killed like 90+% of the population. But that's clearly not what should be done here. So we need to deal with the conflict as it is and find other solutions. According to AI DNA thing, this is from Ron. Ron, good to see you. According to AI DNA thing, Palestinians are at least 50% Jewish. Did you mean a DNA thing, or is that AI DNA thing? I don't know. That sounds a little high, but can you share that, please? Can you share where you saw that? I'd be interested. Panda Boom goes, it wasn't a Palestinian nationality in the Ottoman Empire. In 1919, after British came, they considered themselves the same as Syrians. So you again, many Palestinians did. They viewed themselves as part of Greater Syria. I gave an example, and you could look this up. There was some examples, and even some referring to themselves as Arab Palestinian, even that early. So the first signs of Palestinian nationalism did start in the late 1800s, early 1900s. That doesn't mean the majority of them consider themselves Palestinian, but that's when we start to saw a sign of this movement. Good day, Adar. Can you tell the viewers what happened in Tzfat in 1660? Yeah, there was a pogrom where many Jews were killed. I mean, that's all I know. I don't know. You want me to give more details? You want the numbers? I'm happy to, but I don't know how that's relevant to what we're talking about right now. I'm going to read the first paragraph of Wikipedia. 1616, destruction of Tzfat, also known as Safed. The 1616 destruction of Safed occurred during the Druze power struggle in Mount Lebanon. At the time, the rule of the Ottoman Sultan Mehmet IV, the towns of Safed and nearby Tiberias, with substantial Jewish communities, were destroyed in turmoil. Only a few of the former residents of Tzfat returned to the town after the destruction. Gershom Sholem considers the 1662 reports about the destruction of Safed as exaggerated. Interesting. So some guys contesting that, some Jewish guy, I don't know if that's true. The community, however, recovered within several years, whereas Tiberia lay waste for decades. Safed's central role in Jewish life in Galilee declined after the late 16th century when it had been a major city with a population of 15,000 Jews. By the second half of the 17th century, Safed still had a majority Jewish community with 200 houses and some 4 to 5,000 Jewish residents with about 100 homes. So I understand why you want me to bring this up, Casimir, because many people say that Jews lived fine on the land until the Zionist movement, and that's a clear example of them not living fine. Daniel Iftach, 1799 is the first documented time that the locals of Palestine differentiated themselves from other Levantine Arabs. The pioneer of Palestinian nationality is interestingly Christian. Interesting. I didn't realize it started that early. Panda Boom, you can't just say in 1919 they consider themselves Syrian. Who is they? Like, you're literally having a completely different conversation. Nobody is saying that every single Palestinian in 1919 said that they are Palestinian. We're starting to say that at some point the beginning of Palestinian nationalism began. So just saying they consider themselves Syrian is really missing the point. Not every Levantine Arab thought the same exact thing. Like, come on, bro. Social Surrealist goes, keep in mind that Jews in Palestine pre-Israel were called Jewish Palestinians, so the nationality isn't very clear like other nationalities. Yeah, that is true. There were Jewish Palestinians back then. Where's those super chats at, huh? Let's hire that full-time worker. Let's blow this channel up. Look, we a few months ago hit 10,000 subscribers. We're about to hit 11,000. By the way, the analytics show that the majority of viewers are not subscribers. So if you're watching this, subscribe. It helps the algorithm push it out to more people. It gives me a dopamine reward, right? Whenever I see the sub count growing up, it makes me feel happy and motivates me to do more. So, yalla, guys, do that. Akil goes, when you speak of Jews, are you including the people in Africa, Asia as well, or just the European Jew? This is an interesting question. This is actually something that Rudy, dear brother Rudy, is spending a lot of time doing. He's trying to unite all Jewish populations. Now, this is highly debated. It's like, what makes somebody a Jew, right? Are these African populations actually Jewish, or were they inspired by Judaism? I'm not sure. Never really looked into it. But I think generally that when I say Jew, I'm certainly not talking about European Jews. I mean, more than 50% of Israel's population is comprised of non-European Jews, Jews from the Middle East, North Africa, and some amount from Ethiopia. So no Jew, when they say Jew, are referring only to European Jews. That's not a thing. What's contested are some of these African tribal groups that claim to be Jewish, are they actually Jewish? And I think that's contested. Some would say the reason that's contested is a result of racism, that this Ashken normative worldview doesn't want them to be Jewish. I haven't looked in enough. I can't say whether that's true or not, but I know that's what's being contested, whether some of these African groups are actually Jewish or were they just inspired by Judaism. Casimir goes, if there are no prior property owners, then individuals should be allowed to move in and homestead. Well, property ownership in the way you're describing it is not like a concept that has really existed for all too long in that region. So, um, yeah, this is again trying to apply your libertarian worldview to the conflict, and somehow that moralizes it, right? It's like, oh well, if Palestinians didn't own the land and Jews achieved ownership, they therefore have the right to displace the Palestinians living there. That's not convincing people who aren't already convinced. That's not a convincing argument. The reason Ottomans owned the land in the first place, that was even done through what can be seen as a form of injustice. And who said those Ottomans who didn't rightfully own the land, what right did they have to sell it to people coming from Europe and allow those people then displace people living on the land? And I guess this is one of my critiques of libertarianism. It's like they like to intellectualize certain concepts in a way that just in practice doesn't work or doesn't play out the way they think it does in conversations. And it's almost like trying to win something in the court of law doesn't always win it over in the court of public opinion. And I think this is something the pro-Israel camp is big on. They're like, oh, but technically or legally, we didn't do anything wrong. Okay, that's fine. Legality and morality are not always aligned, right? So we should be winning things in the court of law and the court of public opinion, and we may be good at one, but quite horrible at the other. You should also check out Find for fact checking. It's pretty good. Is that an AI? Find? Ooh. I love finding new AI bots. Okay, ask anything. What are you stuck on? Do you know if this uses ChatGPT? Like, is this ChatGPT build, or is this its own AI? Interesting. I was going to ask you something about October 7th, but this is such a calm stream. I'm not going to get into a lot of the claims about October 7th and what happened, but maybe we'll dedicate a different stream to that. Although I'm not sure there's any point. Every time I talk about October 7th, people get really triggered, and I understand why, but actually, let me say a few words on that. So there's still certain beliefs of what happened on October 7th that we now know didn't happen, but they're still widely believed. And I want to make it very clear that what happened on October 7th was horrible, and there's no justifying it. But I think in an attempt we're not just fighting Hamas. Israel's not just fighting Hamas, they're fighting for global support and sentiment. And in an attempt to do so, there's an incentive to make October 7th and kind of promote the atrocities far and wide without even looking into, did this happen or did this not happen? And it's interesting because what this does is just further contribute to the trauma of October 7th. So I'm going to just give two clear examples of things that are still widely believed that we know did not happen. Many people think that a baby was put in an oven and cooked. And many people think that a baby was cut out of the mother's stomach while the mother was still alive. How can I say with near 100% confidence that this didn't happen? Well, first of all, these are two things that are very easy to prove. All it takes is a single photo. No photo was ever produced. The other way I know this didn't happen is that Israel has released the name of every single person killed and their age. We know that actually one baby was killed. That's horrible, but the number is at 1. If you were to ask the average Israeli or the average pro-Israel person how many babies were killed on October 7th, they would estimate it in the dozens. Right? Now, why is this bad? This is bad for two reasons. October 7th was so traumatic, but it's even more traumatic because of a belief in misinformation. That's one. Two, atrocity denialism is disgusting, but the more inaccurate those in the pro-Israel camp are, the more fodder atrocity denialists have. So every time something is said that isn't true, that is used against Israel to make it seem like nothing really happened on October 7th. So A, accuracy is important for us to be credible, and B, we are deepening our trauma by believing things that didn't actually happen, right? So sometimes I push back on some of the atrocities that are claimed for October 7th, and people get very furious. They make it seem like I'm either siding with Hamas or that I'm being an atrocity denialist, but really I'm just trying to be accurate in what I'm saying. So that's that. And now that we're on this topic, this is a truth-telling AI or something like that. Let's ask it, how many babies were killed on October 7th? It's thinking. So this is accurate, but okay, check this out. On October 7th, at least 29 children were identified by international authorities as having died. That's true. Children being anyone under 18. Now, a baby has a different, like, there's no clear classification of what makes a baby, but under the age of 3, there was only one killed, right? So that's what I refer to as a baby. Some sources suggest that there were 40 beheaded babies, but this claim appears to conflate the two different on-the-ground reports. The Israeli military has discussed local reports and there are verified testimony saying that some people were beheaded, but the exact number is not confirmed. Yeah, so this, so for this specifically, Fine did not do a good job, because a good job would be based on the information that Israel released on those to be killed. We know exactly how many babies were killed, and we actually know how many were beheaded. There were two beheadings on October 7th. They were both soldiers, right? So like, these are things we know to be true. Again, this doesn't take away from the fact that October 7th was horrific, but our credibility matters. And I don't see why we should be contributing to our trauma just to make the other side look like the bad guy and us like the good guy. But thanks for Find. I will play around with it more. Seems like it could be helpful. Dun, dun, dun. Social Surrealist says AI won't replace art for at least the next few decades. I don't know. I'm not sure. I mean, we already, for Grateful Drafts, no longer have a graphic designer, unless we need to create like a pitch deck or something. But all our events and stuff, it's all AI generated. But again, will human created art be like this novel thing that people are interested in? Cool. What else we got? I think we'll wrap it up soon. We're going on an hour and a half. Jules, to you goes, so how do you go back to trusting Gazans after this? Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. There's such heavy mistrust, and Palestinians probably ask the same question: how can we ever trust Israelis? The reconciliation process will need to come with like certain peace building measures that involve us starting to integrate with one another, whether it's just more communication, more dialogues, maybe it's starting to play sports together. It's not it's not an overnight process, right? The trauma is not going to heal overnight. The pain is not going to go away, and it will take years and maybe generations to have full trust. Um, but let me just give you an example, right? A lot of Israelis go to Berlin. Israelis love Berlin. It's a travel destination. My grandmother, who's a Holocaust survivor, would never go to Germany. She doesn't even get in a Mercedes, right? That's how traumatized she is. But we see how, given a generation or two, we can get to a place with more trust. So, if we could confidently go to Berlin, and I could give you other examples of people who have been in conflict for a long time who are now living together side by side. It could happen here. It's just going to take work, and it's going to take years without the trauma being recreated. So, if we have years of peace, um, we could get there. We certainly can. Oh, interesting. Ron goes, it was artificial intelligence thing testing DNA of Palestinians. Interesting. Can you send me a link to that? I'd be very interested in seeing that. Let's see anything else before we wrap it up. Callistos is asking, can we get an interview with Ben Shapiro? Sure, I'd love to. I just don't think he'd give us the time of day at this stage. But we did get Chomsky, so you never know who you're going to get. If anybody has connection to Ben Shapiro, let me know. I'd actually really like to talk to Ben Shapiro about Israel Palestine, um, because he very much is like a black and white thinker. Like for him, it's very much good versus bad, and he's very good at articulating his point, and he can very clearly tell you everything wrong the Palestinians have done and everything right Israel has done, in a way that's compelling. But I would like to push him on certain points where Israel has clearly done things wrong, and push him on the point that there's no reason to just be defensive. Okay, at least admit it. And I think that would be productive to try to push him on certain points of things Israel could do differently or could do wrong, and it's not as black and white as it makes it seem. But I don't know if there's certain conversations that where he is not so combative and really is trying to like find common ground. And I think this is an evolution of his. I think he's maturing throughout the years. So I think we could have an interesting conversation. It's definitely an intimidating conversation because of how sharp and articulate and well informed he actually is. But I would certainly take the opportunity. Cashew Reviews goes, how much of the current crisis can be traced back to the race riots of 2021? I'm not sure what you're referring to. Are you talking about like when Palestinian citizens of Israel and Jewish citizens of Israel took to the streets and were attacking each other? If that's what you're referring to, I don't think the current crisis has anything to do with that. I think that was hard to see and scary. And actually, interestingly, that didn't happen this time. And I wonder why. Like, one of my biggest concerns after October 7th was that we're going to see more race riots within Israel, and it didn't happen. Maybe the Israeli police really just arrested everybody who they thought might be, because they were doing a lot of arrests and stuff. Maybe they just rounded up everybody they thought might be violent. You're clarifying, did the race riots of 2021 result in the extreme right in Israel gaining more traction? Maybe that contributed to it to some extent. I think the right has slowly been getting stronger and stronger, and we just kept having these elections with no one was able to build a coalition. So eventually, Bibi made a deal with the devil, you could say. Casimir goes, since you mentioned libertarianism, you never experienced a proper introduction. You have perceived notions based on either hostile media or incompetent popularizers of developing ideas. I don't know if that's true. I've read some. Derek Bros is. I don't know if he considers himself a libertarian as much as he's an anarchist. I've had him on the show. I've spoken to him. I've watched lectures by Jeffrey Tucker. I'm not sure that's true. I've read some of Anne Rand's book or work, so it's not true. I just think it's an idea that you could make sound compelling with words, but in practice doesn't play out like that. And look, in many ways, I am call it a social libertarian. I don't think government should be imposing. And I also am not sure that I think that these large governments overseeing massive amounts of people is a good idea. I would like to see more local control. So I think a lot of my worldview actually is libertarian. I just don't think the private sector has the solution to all problems. So Danielle, you're saying my husband went to the South October 7th and they gathered the bodies, so one baby is inaccurate. So the name of every single person killed on October 7th has been released with their age. Anybody has access to this information. So I realize there's been these rumors spread, but who am I to trust but the actual list of names released? Israel has zero incentive whatsoever to hide the names of babies killed. They have every interest to release those names. This list is made public through many different publications. We could look through this list and look at all the names. There is one person killed on October 7th under the age of 3. So again, prove me wrong, but I'm going to actually need a name. We know the name of the little girl killed. Her name was Mila Cohen. She was an infant. She was shot by a Hamas member. I looked into this. I'm not just saying this. And so if more babies were killed, what are their names? What are the ages? I am very happy to update what I know to be true, given credible evidence. But the list is public. I've looked through it multiple times. There's one baby killed, one person killed under the age of 3 on October 7th. And interestingly, there's also that one baby. There's a photo, right? Like there were things that we took photos of because we found it to be important. There's a photo of a dead baby, which I've seen, but only one, and her name's Mila Cohen. Yeah, somebody, Connie's saying, didn't somebody from Hatzalah say it was from Zaka? Yossi Landau is his name. He said that. He said that a woman was cut open. But again, all it takes is a single photo. Israel's pretty thorough in certain things. To think that you're going to see atrocities like a woman's baby stomach cut open, and there's not going to be photo evidence that is then sent to the UN, Human Rights Watch, and all these other organizations to verify it's true, to build a case against the atrocities of Hamas. The fact that that didn't happen could lead us to the conclusion that it didn't happen. And then again, what are the names? Give us a photo. Things that are very easily proved are true that weren't proven are true, you could assume are untrue. Like, so yeah, Yossi Landau, he said a bunch of things that were then proven untrue, that no evidence of. So it seems like he has a little bit of a history of stretching the truth quite a bit. And again, when you have such a charged issue, right, I'm not going to take any individual's testimony when it's very easy to prove it. Like I want evidence. Just because somebody said something doesn't mean it's true. People say things, especially when you want to prove the other side is horrible. So The fact that Yossi said something doesn't make it true. Take a photo, send it to different human rights organizations. Very, very, very easy. It's so easy. Every single person has a camera in their pocket. Everyone. And we did see photos were taken, right? Just photos, for some reason, were not taken of the most horrific atrocities described. Yeah, that's true. Imagination scene. There was a woman that was pregnant that was killed. That's true. She was also shot. She wasn't killed by having her baby cut out. That very much is true. So that unborn baby can be considered a second baby, for sure. So Danielle, I know you're saying that you have a first person testimonial, but in order for me to believe that, I would need to know it should be in the official records. And if it's not in the official records, I would need a good explanation as to why it's not in the official records. Why is Israel not including babies being killed and beheaded in the official records? We know of two beheadings. This was proven. We know of one baby killed. The name was released. And again, I will change my mind the second evidence is presented, and this is something that's very easy to present evidence on. What is their name? What is their age? I'm really not asking for much, you know. So Danielle, without a doubt, anybody collecting bodies is going to be severely traumatized because it was horrific what happened. But that's not the same as multiple babies being beheaded or even multiple babies being killed. So, Connie, this is actually a good point. I think that was poor translation of comments in Hebrew that delineated between kids and babies, right? Because we know that 29 people under the age of 18 were killed. It's possible that that's the translation, that it's, you know, that that is was translated to babies. Imagine I did use the search and not the chat. I did use that tab on Find. So yeah, Danielle, that's another point that gets me to be skeptical of certain claims that this was a heavily filmed event, right? So Hamas members all had GoPros, and there's not just footage that can be taken afterwards. This was a heavily filmed event, and what you don't see here on these recordings are babies being killed and people being beheaded. That doesn't exist on the films. So Danielle's saying testimonies. So another interesting thing when it comes to testimonies is generally the claims that we're hearing of the worst atrocities are not even by two people, they're by one people, and a lot of them have then been proven to change their stories when asked again. Now you're saying that Palestinians are more likely to believe when given testimonies. I think that's probably dependent on who you're asking, right? So the pro-Palestine camp is going to believe something a Palestinian says, take at face value, right? Somebody who's pro-Israel is going to believe Israelis and question what Palestinians are saying. In fact, I think both sides have some incentive to exaggerate, and both sides, and also trauma sometimes skews our judgment and memory, right? When horrific things happen, we sometimes perceive things differently than it was. Um, so I think when it comes to knowing what's true on such things, we either need to require um, multiple testimonies corroborating certain claims, but more importantly, forensics and video evidence is really the best thing we can do. And again, this just has not been produced by a lot of the worst atrocities being claimed. So, and in terms of the videos that were released, I watched every single minute of video that was made public. And then there was the 42 minutes that was shown to the Knesset and people around the world. And I've seen notes taken on that, describing what was in the videos. And there's actually nothing quite new in those videos, in the 42 minutes or 47 minutes that were showed to the Knesset. That was pretty much the same crimes you could see in the public videos. Patrick asked, would I invite Elon Papa? Yeah, for sure. I'd be down to talk to Elon. So Danielle, you're saying, I think the argument of proof needed is ridiculous. October 7th happened. No one asked America for proof of 9/11. Well, I would say 9/11 and October 7th, people are not asking for proof of what has been shown on video, right? So no one is asking for proof that Israelis were massacred on October 7th because it's heavily filmed. It was a highly filmed event. We saw that a brutal massacre occurred, and it's horrific. Same with 9/11, right? That is, I mean, the whole world watched that happen live. But when it comes to specific, examples, specific cases of atrocities being made, we can't just expect people to believe it because somebody said that. So there are the worst people out there denying that even a massacre occurred on October 7th. But those who are making uncorroborated claims, like about the babies, are only giving fodder to those who are denying the atrocity altogether. And this is the importance of being accurate. So some want to deny October 7th, but almost very few people are actually denying that a massacre occurred. They're just denying the worst atrocities that are being made, because often what they're doing is these atrocities are being stated in order to justify what Israel is doing in Gaza. So they're saying, like, the claim is you're trying to convince the world that the death and destruction in Gaza is justified because Hamas did this on October 7th. This that's being described, a lot of that is uncorroborated. In fact, the lack of evidence is evidence that it didn't happen. Imagination scene goes, Haaretz has a list of all the names. Those were killed. My count, it was 32 under 18. 2 were babies, 1 unborn. Yeah, that's exactly based on my assessment of the list as well. Although this one finds says 29, so I wonder what the difference in 3 is, but I do remember it being 32 as well. Cool. I finally made it to the end of the comments. Okay, I think we're gonna wrap it up. Final thoughts. I don't know if I have any final thoughts. I enjoyed the stream. It seemed like we had solid viewership all throughout. I'm down to do more of these solo streams. They're definitely easier. Good day to you too, Casimir. Always great chatting. Next week we'll do a call-in show so we can have more people on. And Casimir, if you ever want to have a conversation about libertarianism, I'd be down, but economic policy is not my area of expertise. So I would want you to have that conversation with somebody who is, more of a lefty and have a substantive discussion on the topic. I think you could be interesting. So I'm definitely down to do that. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Again, as we saw the second we spoke about like the atrocities of October 7th, it did become heated, and that was not my intention. That's why I wanted to stay away from it. I almost regret bringing it up again, but I do think it is very important for us to be accurate. The more accurate we are, the more credibility we have, the less our words can be used against us. So that is the importance of it. Patrick is saying, would I contact Elon Pape? I don't really have much time, but if you want to reach out to him, please do and connect us. I think one of our interns reached out to him years ago. I don't know if he responded. And yeah, expect at least one live stream next week. Maybe we'll do two. I feel a call-in show coming, so whoever wants to hop on and chat, would love to have you there. Sending you all lots of love.